Samantha Scarlette, our EJC paranormal correspondent. Here she is, Samantha. Hello.
Hi, how are you guys?
Welcome. There she is. Our paranormal correspondent, Samantha Scarlette. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
You like your little intro music, or?
Yeah, it's fun. X-Files like mashup.
You're welcome.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think it's pretty good, personally.
Yeah, I think it's awesome.
Do you know how long that took Jason to make that?
How long?
Like 5 days.
Really? Oh, wow.
And like a case of Red Bull. I didn't sleep the entire time.
What's new in your world?
Not a whole lot. I've just been like busy with like a ton of stuff, and
you're engaged now, right?
Oh yeah, totally.
Oh, congratulations.
Mazel tov.
Yeah, not for real, but.
Well,
wait, what?
Wait, what? You thought I was really engaged?
No.
Oh, that's a different Samantha Scarlette you were looking up on.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah.
I know.
No, I mean, yes, I'm engaged, but it's not. There will be no legally binding wedding there.
Are you?
I'm pretty sure they're all legally binding.
You guys. I saw on Facebook. You guys look like you're in love. You got some weird photos.
Oh, are you talking about you and JJ Bryan, the curator of that?
Satan,
Satan himself.
Satan himself. Yeah, you're engaged with Satan.
I don't know. You guys got engaged. Congratulations.
Oh,
What about his girlfriend?
Oh yes, but it's like, yeah, maybe do some research on him. I don't think there's no legally binding wedding is happening there. It's not like the type of engagement you normally think of.
Samantha, first of all, we've never done research in the past, and we sure shit ain't gonna start now.
Isn't his
Second of
girlfriend?
all, continue.
His girlfriend's a witch, isn't she? She's gonna cast a spell on you. You better watch it.
No. Lena is his like co-conspirator with his like La Bianca's band and some of his art stuff.
Oh, so they're not.
She's not. No, Lena has a boyfriend.
That's not Satan.
Satan, JJ is. The picture, the engagement photo, for instance, with the rings. They're not together anymore, but his boyfriend at the time took that photo. So, like I'm saying, there's no legally binding wedding happening there.
You live a very colorful life.
Wait. I don't know. I'm confused. Your fiance has a boyfriend.
Know that
they broke up.
They broke up
on him with you.
Oh,
but let's get back to this.
They broke up so you guys could get married.
Well, we have to move.
No.
Wait.
Samantha's turning Satan straight.
Let's everybody.
Damn.
No.
She's breaking home. Sam's breaking home.
Let's get to the bottom of this. We have to get the guests on the line because we're running a bit behind on the guests. But we'll get to the bottom of this.
You're running
afterwards.
a bit behind. I'm sorry.
Okay.
The guest is here for us, not the other way around.
Heaven's Gate.
Heaven's Gate. It's all about Heaven's Gate. Samantha Scarlett bringing on Benjamin E. Zeller via Skype. Let's connect him right now. I'm so glad I have full internet now. Last week I was going crazy.
Yeah, I hate Skype, so
I know.
I'm so happy not to be on there.
Glad we were able to. Mr. Benjamin Zeller, welcome to the EJC show. Samantha Scarlette is here. It's our paranormal segment.
Thank you for having me.
Hi.
So Benjamin E. Zeller, he's an assistant professor of religion at Lake Forest College, and he has a book out. It's called Heaven's Gate, America's UFO Religion. It was the 2015 Best Book Award winner from the Communal Studies Association, and it's all about Heaven's Gate, where, in 1997, I think most people know the story, 39 people in Rancho Santa Fe, California, they all committed suicide at once. It was a big news story at the time. It was linked to the Hale-Bopp comet, if I am recalling correctly. But
yes.
Let's dive into it. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's a fascinating topic. Thank you.
It has. It's always fascinated me. So when the suicides happened, I was actually a college student at the time, and I was taking classes. I was a religious studies student. I was taking classes about ancient millennialism, ancient messianism. So millennialism is belief in the end of the world, basically. So I was taking classes about, these groups 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, believed in the end of the world. And then here in front of my very eyes was a sort of the end of the world group unfolding with a mass suicide. So it was, it's fascinated me since then.
This is before we dive into the specifics, speaking on the broader context, the social zeitgeist of the 90s or what have you, do you see a through line between Heaven's Gate and the Tokyo sarin gas attacks from I think it was 3 years before, committed by Shinrikyo.
Chris, can you explain what that is? I have no idea what you're talking about.
In 1994, another religious cult called Am Shinrikyo or Am Shinriko, they attacked the Tokyo subway lines, like half a dozen subways or something, with the sarin gas, and a couple people died, and hundreds were injured by the gas. And it was a big terrorist act and a huge cultural watershed in Japan. And, it was another religious cult. And, I'm just wondering about if our guest here has any thoughts on, whether the two share a certain DNA in their kind of broader cultural origins.
Yeah, what they share is that build up towards Y2K and towards the sort of the turn of the millennium. There were a lot of these groups, and there have been for a long time, who believed in the end of the world and that the end of the world is coming. But the cultural zeitgeist, as you called it at the time in the 1990s, was that the year 2000 was going to mark this major moment of transition. And you had groups that look forward to it as a positive transition, like the New Age movement that talked about sort of this dawning New Age which was coming. But you also had groups which looked at it as literally the end of the world. And some groups that wanted to trigger the end of the world themselves. So, some groups were just waiting. Other groups wanted to trigger it. So Om Shinrikyo was definitely one of those groups. They were actually pushing for the end of the world. They have a very complicated backstory, inspired by Buddhism, by Shinto, by Christianity, by Hinduism. They were really theologically very complex. Heaven's Gate was also a group that was looking forward to the end of the world, but they directed their violence, if you want to call it that, inward as opposed to outward.
Let's talk about Heaven's Gate. Can you give us some background on them?
Sure. So Heaven's Gate started in the mid-'70s. It was founded by two Texans. It really didn't take off until the late '70s, though. They got their first converts along the West Coast, California and Oregon. But the whole point of Heaven's Gate, the founders taught, was that it was a way to get off the planet. It was a way to evolve beyond our human condition. They believed in reincarnation. They believed that we had gone through cycles of incarnations and that we were personally evolving, but that our final evolution would be to evolve into perfected extraterrestrial beings, what they called next level beings. And they believed they taught a process, that's what they called it. They called it the process, which would get you off this planet. It would help you evolve into this perfected sort of angelic extraterrestrial being.
Now, before he had started the cult, Marshall Applewhite was a university professor, and he was actually fired from the university over having a homosexual relationship with a student or students. Do you think that part of it, the genesis of the cult and some of the later practices, stem from his repressed homosexuality?
Yeah, but it wasn't just his homosexuality. It was his sexuality in general, which was the problem. He had failed in all of his relationships, all of his sexual relationships with men and with women. I think for him, his bisexuality just made it even more problematic. The fact that he struck out with everyone, didn't matter what gender. He had the whole planet was available for him to have a relationship with, and it just wasn't working. So for him, he wanted to move beyond sexuality and move beyond human relationships. And ultimately, Nettles, who's the co-founder of the group, she was also trying to move beyond her relationship. She was in the process of getting divorced when the two of them met. And for both of them, it was really important that they move beyond sexuality, that they move beyond any sort of relationship, which they saw as very human, and they wanted to transcend their humanity. So absolutely, rejecting their sexuality was absolutely key. And for Applewhite in particular, because he was bisexual, it was even more sort of an issue that he had to reject any sort of possible sexual relationship.
Okay, and we'll come back to this again later on when we get more into the ends of the cult, because it ended up playing a big part in everything. But how did they start amassing followers? I mean, because it's kind of like their ideas were pretty crazy and out there, and yet they were able to get all these people to join and give up all their belongings, give up their family. I mean, in the case of, I think it was the black couple that had joined, they had children, and they let go of their children to join this religion or cult or whatever you want to call it.
Before you answer that question, Ben, Samantha, can I ask you, like, what were some of these beliefs that were so out there?
About the UFOs were coming and that you were going to ascend on a UFO and all that. I mean, let me ask that question again. What were these beliefs that were so out there?
Oh, maybe Benjamin Zeller can field that.
Yeah.
No, never mind. It's a joke. But anyways, but at the same time,
no one got it.
At the same time, though, I mean,
no one ever gets Eddie's jokes.
Yeah, we'll just move on.
It's on a whole nother level.
I know. I'm on another astral plane with Marshall Applewhite. Anyways,
when Hale Bop comes back, we'll get all Eddie's jokes at the same time, and our brains will
anyway,
explode.
back to Ben.
Ben, go ahead. Sorry.
How is it that they were able to amass all these followers who were willing to give up their entire lives and possessions to follow them?
And
so
genitals,
what they're doing,
if I remember.
they're combining a couple of really powerful draws, particularly that were powerful in the 1970s. So one of them is this form of Christianity, which is oriented around the end of the world, called dispensationalism. So if you remember, there was a series of books called the Left Behind books, which were really popular in the 90s.
Right.
Yes, every fanatic Christian I know read it.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. So that's part of that same movement. In the 70s, it was Hal Lindsey's book, Late Great Planet Earth. And it was really popular. And basically, it talked about sort of how the end of the world would unfold. And it claimed that this was what the Bible taught. The Bible taught that the world was going to end in a very particular way. What Heaven's Gate did is they took that sort of standard Christian dispensationalist teaching about the end of the world, and they said, yeah, it's all fine, except instead of angels or space aliens, instead of it being visions of sort of chariots of fire, it's actually spaceships. Instead of it being sort of clouds and sort of these supernatural sort of miraculous things, it's all extraterrestrial technology. And it was written in coded language that ancient people could understand. But actually, it's talking about the end of the world in UFO style. And if you actually look at what they taught, it matches up really well with that standard dispensational system. The rapture is the key to it. And in the rapture idea, the people who are saved are going to rise up and meet Christ midair. Then they're going to go off to heaven. In the Heaven's Gate version, Christ is actually piloting a UFO, and you get picked up with basically a tractor beam, and you get pulled up, you meet Christ midair, and then you go off to literally the heavens. So they were
none of this
from
is
that.
controversial.
And how do you know this is not true?
That's
though?
just fact.
I mean, what facts do you have to dispute this?
What do I have? Well, have you seen it?
He's being funny.
That's just the point, right? I mean, one person's religion is someone else's cult and vice versa. If you're sort of a deep Christian believer in this, it makes total sense to you. If you're a deep Heaven's Gate believer, it makes total sense to you. Who's right and who's kooky? I can't tell you. From the inside, they all make sense. Or from the outside, they all look like nuts.
You're a religious studies student at the time, I believe you said. What's your own, if you don't mind my asking, your own religious background or belief system? Yeah.
So I'll tell you what my approach is. I basically try to be agnostic about all things I'm studying. I do have my own beliefs, of course, but I bracket them. And it ultimately doesn't matter what I am. I could be a Hindu, I could be a Buddhist, I could be a Jew, I could be a Muslim, I could be a Christian. I try to bracket that out, and I try to study the groups I'm looking at from their own perspective to make sense of how they would work within those groups. So I really try to take who I am, and when I'm writing my books, when I'm writing my articles, when I'm doing my research, I really try to bracket that away. So when I was studying Heaven's Gate, I tried to figure out, if you're a Heaven's Gater, if you're a member of this group, why would it make sense to you? Why is this totally illogical, crazy system to an outsider totally logical and sane from an insider? So it sort of depends what I'm studying at the moment, to answer your question.
So we have the origin of this cult and Marshall Applewhite's very early history, and then we fast forward and we get the Hale Bopp comet and this mass suicide by...
Wait, before that, though, can we just talk about... Also, aside from people giving up everything for what to us seems like an absolute complete crazy talk, people also, he also had complete control over them. I watched a documentary on this a couple months ago, and he told them you had to shave on the males, shave their face in a certain direction. They had to all eat the same food every day. There were very specific things that they had to do and had to follow, and how they had to go about their day that were dictated by Applewhite.
That's correct.
Which, by the way, by the time that they were living in San Diego and the suicides, Bonnie Nettles was long dead of, I think, breast cancer or something like that. But
you mentioned the castration too, right?
Yeah, and they also had to all castrate, or the males castrate themselves. There was no sex.
They did it
allowed.
themselves, or nobody did that for them? Somebody.
Oh, it was voluntary.
I think they went to Mexico. I think they went to Mexico for that.
Okay.
Yeah, and they actually weren't all castrated, just some of them. All right, so in terms of the rules, yeah, that was really important to them. They tried to live like sort of a combination between monks and sort of a vision of sort of a spaceship crew where everything was predetermined according to very strict rules. Sometimes they actually called themselves a monastery, in fact. So they much like a monk or a nun, they tried to live by very strict rules about how you should and shouldn't act. But even more so, they tried to model these rules on how they imagined the space beings, the next level beings, would actually operate. And for this, they were partially inspired by science fiction. They were partially inspired by Star Trek, among other things, to try to imagine how it is that sort of this crew would live. But it was really important to them that they all follow, these really rigid, regimented rules. They experimented with different sorts of rules. So the rules changed. Sometimes it required, every 18 minutes you would have to sort of stop and meditate. Other times they experimented with different diets, very extreme diets. They had all sorts of different regulations. But that's entirely part of what was going on. They were really trying to remake themselves into this sort of otherworldly, extraterrestrial spaceship crew. Yeah.
Yes, no, with the diets, they were big proponents of what we know now as like the Beyonce lemon diet, where you just drink lemonade with cayenne pepper for like 10 days straight. Yeah,
they called it a purging diet. Yeah, so they were trying to basically almost sever their connection to their bodies. I mean, ultimately they did, of course, through the suicides, but way before that, they wanted to really disconnect from the human body. The human body was a problem for them. They wanted to get beyond it. So all of these really extreme measures of treating your body in a really sort of strict way was partially their attempt to separate themselves from their bodies and not identify with them. Sex was a real big issue. Anything which was enjoyable with the body you had to avoid because they were trying to overcome the body. So no sex, no drugs. So that means I could have sex.
What? No, never mind. Go ahead. But yeah, no sex, no drugs. What else? No
booze, no pot. This was a big thing. So they went from having hundreds of members when they began to when they actually started telling everyone they had to follow these rules. They went down to 50 or 60 pretty quickly. I mean, they went from being sort of a freewheeling group of people in the late 70s who were into UFOs and space aliens and sort of personal evolution. And then when all these rules start coming down and start being enforced, people just, they up and leave. They say, that's it. I can't do this. So they really shrink really, really rapidly from several hundred down to basically 60 or so, maybe 70 in the late 70s. And then they kept shrinking until the end.
Can we back up a half step? Did you just say that Beyonce is on the Heaven's Gate diet?
No, it's like it's a well-known. A lot of people have done it. I have friends who've done it. I've tried it. It's a diet where you drink lemonade that like it's homemade with like cayenne pepper and then either like a certain type of, I think, is it maple syrup or agave nectar? And like it's well known from Beyonce using it to like slim down for dream girls and award shows because you drop like 10, 15 pounds in like 10 days doing this diet. So it's also called the Master Cleanse. But I just found it interesting that this diet that's popular now with like celebrities and young girls and models and whatever was something that Heaven's Gate used as part of their cult, like control.
Ahead of their time.
Yeah.
Trendsetters, if you will.
Now, back leading up to the mass suicide, they had appeared on mainstream news outlets or like media outlets. Like they were in Jacques Vallée's book, The Messengers of Deception. LA Weekly had interviewed them. They had been on Art Bell's Coast to Coast many times. Did anybody see this mass suicide coming, or did this just catch everyone by surprise?
Yeah, pretty much caught everyone by surprise. If people had been paying attention in retrospect, it would have been clear. They had some Usenet posts which made it pretty clear where it was going, but Usenet was not particularly a big thing then. I mean, some of your listeners might not even know what Usenet is. Usenet was an internet-based bulletin board system. It didn't have graphics. It was entirely text-based. It was like it has news groups people would post sort of comments and stories to. And they posted quite a bit in a number of different Usenet forums. And some of their postings made it pretty clear that they were planning to leave the planet one way or another, potentially in a violent way. But by and large, their posts were ignored or actually disparaged by people who read it and thought that they were a bunch of nutcases. So in retrospect, no, it's not surprising. At the time, they really weren't on anyone's radar. Very few academics studied them. There were only 2 or 3 people who had really run across them before and wrote about them. Very little very few journalists were that interested in them for a sustained period of time. Yeah, there had been articles about them, but no one was really paying much attention. They were pretty off the grid.
So all of a sudden we have the Hale-Bopp comet, which I believe was discovered either that year or just a year or 2 before by 2 amateur astrologists, I believe. And Heaven's Gate attributed that. If I recall, they thought a UFO was hiding behind that comet. Were they waiting for an event like Hale-Bopp, or did that reflect a sort of increasing despair on the part of the leaders of the cult? And suddenly the appearance of this comet offered an opportunity to culminate with this mass suicide. Was this a convenient event for them, or were they waiting since the 70s for something just like this comet to appear?
Before you answer that question, though, just for like real quick context for the listeners who don't know what Hale-Bopp is,
it's a comet.
It's a comet. It's the brightest seen for many decades, and it's the most widely observed, I guess, of the 20th century. So people were kind of freaking out when this happened. It was a pretty big deal. I know we were pretty young when this happened. I mean, it was 20 years ago, so we were only like 20 years old. No, just kidding.
Yeah,
we were like
12.
toddlers. Basically,
Yeah, I was 7 when this happened.
But anyways, I just wanted to add,
older, but still, it was memorable.
it was a big deal. But anyways, Chris's question was very good and very insightful. I hope I didn't derail you too much. Go ahead. I just wanted to give some context.
I sort of have forgotten it, but I'm going to try to go from memory.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, were they waiting for an event, or was this a convenient coincidence that allowed depressing leadership to
just abort,
pull the plug?
Yeah. Okay, it's a bit of both, but it wasn't so much a depressed leadership, it was a frustrated leadership. They had tried and tried and tried to try to seek converts and to try to get their message out. And every time they tried to do it, they were met with incredible failure. They had made this sort of 14-hour video series, which they at very high expense had broadcast on satellite network in the 90s, and it resulted in almost nothing, very, very few converts. And in fact, some of the people who converted actually had been members in the 70s and had left and were trying to find their way back. They had taken out a national advertisement in USA Today newspaper, didn't go anywhere. They had posted to Usenet, didn't go anywhere. They got one person off the internet to join. So they kept trying everything they could do. They had these videos, they had these internet postings, they went on tours around the country. They were driving around and going to different college campuses and community places and churches and trying to drum up interest. And it was failing. So it wasn't so much depression as incredible frustration. They felt as if their mission was coming to a close because no one was going to take them seriously anymore. They had tried as best they could, but they were also looking for a way off the planet. That was their goal from the beginning. They wanted to get off the planet. And at first they thought they would go in bodily form, but once Bonnie Lou Nettles, their co-founder, once she died in the mid-'80s, it was clear that they didn't have to bring their bodies with anymore. They start to increasingly think about leaving without their bodies. So they were really looking for not so much an excuse, but a marker was the term they used, a marker that it was time to leave. And Hale-Bopp was that marker as far as they were concerned. It was time to leave. So both. It was both a frustration that no one was taking them seriously and that their attempts to spread their message had reached its limits, and also this long-standing hope for some sort of indication that it was time to get off our planet.
Now, was there, because everything was based off of UFOs, and it also happens that same week, or the week prior, on I can't ever remember the exact date, but it was in the teens. I think it was around the 17th of March, 19, or maybe it was the 19th of March, 1997. There was the Phoenix Lights, which were the largest mass UFO sighting probably ever in U.S. history. Did that play anything into it, or is that just completely unrelated?
Probably did, but they didn't leave any evidence to it. They didn't say anything. It would be conjecture because we really don't know. It would make sense to me because they were looking for synchronicity is the term, when everything was coming together. So here was this comet that everyone was paying attention to. When they started in the 70s, there was a comet as well, a much smaller comet. But so they were already sort of attuned to comets. There were the claims that there was the companion. So there was the belief that there was a UFO trailing Hale-Bopp comet that the government was covering up, the Hale-Bopp companion it was called. There's just a whole thing on the Art Bell show, and people called in and said they could see it, or they had evidence of it. So whether it was there or not, they thought the whole world was paying attention. So there was the comet, there was a supposed UFO, there were other UFO sightings. It was coming up on Easter. Remember, this is a group that ultimately sort of derived from Christianity, so Easter was still very important to them as a sort of a moment. And all these things were coming up, and that was, I think, for them, a sign that the time had come.
Yeah, I mentioned Shinrikyo at the top of the interview, and I actually forgot as we were going through the interview, this was also the same period of time when we had the Branch Davidian Waco disaster. Mm-hmm. So a lot of Christian eschatology and just a lot of millennialism and end of the world fears. But now here we are. It's 2017, March 2017. It's the 20th anniversary, and you've written a book, and it's 20 years later. What do you think is the legacy, if anything, of this cult and this suicide? Do you see echoes of this still in the society and culture today, or is this just a peculiar historical event that makes for a bizarre read and speaks to personal?
Are we looking at cycles here? Or?
Yeah.
So in some ways they were sort of their moment, of their time, of the sort of that millennial era. There were lots of other groups looking for the end of the world at that time period. In some ways also they speak to the people who joined them, either witnessed or were the children of the people who witnessed the original sort of UFO sightings, right? The Kenneth Arnold flying saucer sightings, the Roswell crash, all that. So ufology was still relatively new when Heaven's Gate was starting in the 70s. It was only, basically it was that generation or the generation before. Whereas now the stuff is old hat. Now UFOs are, they're part of our popular entertainment. They're on our movies and TV. Whereas then it was new. So in some ways, Heaven's Gate couldn't really happen again. It spoke to that moment of sort of the late 20th century. On the other hand, they were deeply invested and influenced by conspiracy thinking and by this culture of conspiracy, this idea that these forces are working behind the scenes, conspiring against them. And that, I think, speaks really strongly to our current moment. I don't know how much attention you pay to politics, but Trump's claims about wiretapping and things like that, which just today the FBI was testifying about, all these sort of claims about government surveillance and conspiracies. I mean, that very much speaks to our present day moment. And it has for, people have talked about conspiracies for hundreds of years. So I think that's going to stick around, this belief that they had access to the truth and the rest of us didn't.
Heaven's Gate, yes. America's UFO Religion is the name of the book. Benjamin E. Ziller is the author, and you can pick this up wherever books are sold. Amazon, I know, has it for sure. Thanks for coming on the show. Go ahead, Samantha. Do you have one more comment?
I was going to say, I recommend that, especially for our younger viewers who probably don't know all the details of this because they might not have been around when this happened, definitely go check out the book, go watch documentaries on it because it's very interesting. We didn't even get into the more crazy aspects like the money in their pockets and the actual mass suicide, which I think is what everyone thinks about, and the Nike Decade sneakers. So there's a lot more we didn't get to even touch on during this interview.
It's weird. I still remember that visual of the Nike sneakers and the bodies underneath the black tarp.
It was a purple handkerchief. It's burned in my consciousness.
Yeah, me too. Actually, we were very young when we saw that.
I was in first or second. I think
they showed that on the news, all those dead bodies.
When it happened, and I remember seeing it on the news on TV. I can't believe my parents let me watch that. But that's forever in my consciousness.
Those sneakers for a couple $1,000s on eBay. Someone had.
I've seen that. I want to buy a pair.
That's so creepy.
I'm wearing a pair right now.
Real fast,
Decades.
I know Eddie is hoping to wrap up. We're running out of time.
It's not me.
but,
It's the man keeping us down. We have to move along.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
anyway,
thank you so much for chatting. It was fun.
is there any outreach or anything that might have been done to prevent that or to prevent something like that tragedy from happening again?
Well, I mean, this group is gone. They're not doing outreach anymore. All the active members are gone. This was a group which wanted to get off.
No, there is one active member that's still around that runs their website. But
Okay.
Well, there are some ex-members who run the website, but they're not trying to reform the group. And there are some ex-members who are still active online as well.
Well, there's echoes of Jonestown here, and is there any way that we can prevent the next Jonestown or the next Heaven's Gate? Just like briefly, is there an outreach or what can we do to keep this tragedy from happening in the future?
Well, these were people who didn't feel like they had a place on our planet. They felt like they were rejected by their society, by their family, by their friends. They felt as if they didn't belong here, and that's why they wanted to leave here. So ultimately, the way to prevent this sort of tragedy is to ensure that people around us feel like they belong here.
You're right.
That's
It all goes back to something that's simple, right? I mean, just making sure everyone is feeling involved and included and wanted and loved. I mean, we're just human beings, damn it.
Well, to interject,
yeah.
I don't think that it could have been stopped because if you watch like the documentaries, even when they talk to some of the family members of the people that commit suicide with Heaven's Gate, the family members, like they're upset that their family member is dead, like anybody normally would. But some of them honestly were like kind of like not to say okay with it, but like understood that this was like what they're like the people had such conviction and such a strong belief that this is what they had to do. I don't think that there was any way of stopping them. Like when somebody has their mind made up so determinedly and they truly believe it, I don't think they could have been stopped.
Well, this has been riveting. Benjamin E. Zeller is the name of the author, Heaven's Gate, America's UFO Religion, name of the book, and he's an assistant professor of religion at Lake Forest College. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. This is fascinating.
You're very welcome. A pleasure to talk.
I wish we had more
Thank
time.
you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
You will.
Bye.
And good job, Samantha.
Yeah, great get, Samantha. This is riveting to me. And just as I brought it up and we were talking about it, and Benjamin's answer to my last question there, made me think of how this phenomenon really continues into the present day. Like he's kind of describing ISIS, except instead of internalizing that violence, they're exporting it, imposing it and inflicting it on others on a global scale.
Yeah, that's
but
a
it's the
chilling
same
thought.
apocalyptic, eschatological sort of doom and gloom mindset that is.
It's inflicting so much harm on so many people, including the ones involved.
Yeah, driving a train into the wall,
it's mind-boggling that people will put themselves in that sort of a situation where they're basically terminating their lives and helping those around them and their lives, and they feel like they honestly feel like they're doing something for the greater common good.
Yeah. How do we reach out and keep people from feeling that alienated? How do we?
I don't know, but I think a lot of it comes to that, like any extreme belief is dangerous, whether it's an extreme religious belief or people that take conspiracies too far, like the prepper movement. Anything taken to a certain degree of extremity, it's dangerous. I mean, even with the current political climate, whether you like Trump or you don't like Trump, some people take it to such a crazy fanatical degree of like the hatred, and it's too far. Like there's always like a middle ground on what's healthy with your belief system, your likes, your dislikes. But when it becomes like a fanatical thing and religion's a bad word because obviously like you can be religious at a thing, but like when it becomes like that this is your like routine and this is all you think about and this is all you talk about and everything, then it's dangerous,
Moderation is very important,
yes.
Except when we're talking about Scientology, which is the one true faith.
Which ancient philosopher warned us long ago that the essence of life is moderation, right? Who was that?
Yeah.
Was that Socrates?
Actually, contrary to his contemporary reputation, I believe that was the hedonist philosopher that was
You're a philosophy major. Come on.
It's on the tip of my tongue. It's on the tip of my
Somebody
tongue.
Google it.
Just like
Google
that
it.
deep.
Hold. You gotta just one
But
second.
in any case, though, anyways, thank you, Samantha. Great segment. Great to have the guest on. And who do we have next week?
Next week, I think I have. I was actually talking to the person before we go on air. I contacted a psychic. We're not going to have him do any readings or anything.
Did you contact him or did he contact you?
No, I contacted him. Because I was like watching a video on YouTube about different psychics who had predicted world events. And this guy back in the 90s, he was like on a radio program, and he said said there's going to be an attack on a building, and it's in a city in the Midwest begins with an O, and literally 90 minutes after the radio program, the Oklahoma City bombing happened. So
Jesus, are you trying to get us shot by SEAL Team 6?
I thought that would be cool to have on this psychic who actually has a actual.
So he's more in tune to world
events.
He's in tune to world events. He's not here to do personal things next week. We're just gonna talk about what's going to happen.
Here. I don't want anything personal, or you guys. So yeah. So
right.
So I talked to him before, so I think that's who we're going to have on next week. So that should be cool.
All right. Well, that sounds great. Looking forward to that. That's going to be very interesting. And SamanthaScarlette.com. Follow her on Twitter. She's also linked up to our Twitter, EJC Show. And it's Sammy Scarlette, at Sammy Scarlette. Go.
Yeah.
You're always doing something. What do you want to plug?
Mention the beginning of the show, what we were talking about. Yeah, to any guys out there listening, and only if you're a rock star. I'm still single outside of performance art. So
all right, well, there we go. We set the record straight, and glad we got that out there to clear the air. Good luck to you.
And any museums, we're looking for a venue to have our performance art at. So
I'm sorry, what? Say that again.
I said any museums out there listening, we're looking for a venue to have a special performance art show at. So if anybody from the MoMA or the Whitney is listening, we want to talk to you.
Okay.
Samantha Scarlette's on the market artistically and sexually.
Well, oh God, no! I didn't mean it like that.
No, she just meant
didn't you?
A little like a kiss on the cheek, Lee.
No.
Anyways, all right. Goodbye. Have a great evening. Good job. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much. Great get.